Hello and welcome. Happy New Year. It's the first back chat of 2018 and here we are again at the Arc in Headingley. And to mark the occasion, we've pulled together a real heavyweight panel who've braved the icy blasts outside to come along and talk about Rugby League. We've got Danny Lockwood, the beast from the east. Don't worry about his icy blasts, it's more or less all hot air. Also, Chris Irvine, the mouth from the south, who will be proving once again he's just gob and no trousers. And Martyn Sadler from League Express is here as well. And he is a string vest from the west. Very northern, but not very flattering. Right, gents, what a start to the season we've had. It's a really interesting, on the field. We've got lots to talk about off the field. But let's just talk about on the field first of all. What have you made to the start of the season? Martyn, first of all.
Well, I think it's been interesting, although it's been a pretty disrupted start to the season with Wigan and Hull and Leeds all heading off to Australia for various reasons. But you know, we had a couple of weeks, and then most of the teams in Super League didn't have a game, and they got back at the weekend, and it was pretty interesting, wasn't it, that we saw that Wigan, Hull and Leeds all lost at the weekend, having come back from Australia. Yeah. So I mean, I thought they played, you know, certainly Wigan and Hull both played fairly well. I didn't think they showed tremendous signs of jet lag, but you know, it must have had an effect on them. So I think the season will now start to settle down in Super League, and we'll start to see a little bit more consistency and interesting matches.
I think St Helens have come out of the traps at full speed. Pretty much everybody else still finding the feet. Sure. Definitely, as Martyn says, you know, the Wigan and Hull thing. A terrific experience, I would imagine, for the players. A fortnight at this time of year in Australia, and for the fans.
They went economy class apparently. The players
you know what? I'm going to turn down a trip like that because I've got 2 inches less leg room, Dave. It was great, but I'm really not sure what it achieved in terms of.
Well, I mean, it provoked a well, maybe not provoked a response yet, but it provoked maybe an interest from the NRL clubs to say, actually, there might be some mileage in this world
I think it added just an extra dimension to the start of the season.
Sure.
3 clubs to go down there. From a media perspective, that's all good. That's all grist to the mill. It's not just
admirable.
It's not admirable.
Yeah.
And then you've got this dimension at the moment. You've got Saints first. You've got Wakefield second and Widnes third, which is great. So while Wigan and Hull and Leeds have been away,
4 games.
I know, but look at Wakefield. They're flying high at the moment, and Widnes an encouraging start. So it's a little bit of a different dimension. So I think yes, it's had some disruption, the 3 teams going down under, but it's opened some nice possibilities in this early rounds.
And I think you've got to admire their enterprise. I mean, Leeds, for example, you know, saving the World Club Challenge, which is what Melbourne they actually did. Melbourne wouldn't have come here. So, you know, what a great thing. You know, Gary Hetherington does have a world view of rugby league and was determined to get the game on. And I thought they ran into a terrific Melbourne team, and Leeds were pretty under strength, of course, in that match. And the game probably worked out as we perhaps would have expected. But great as well. Wigan, you've got to admire Wigan's enterprise, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, you know, they're claiming that they've made quite a lot of money on it. We've not seen, you know, obviously we don't know. We're not party to the financial details of that trip, but you know, it's great.
It made some money. It made some money.
Let's hope so.
Ian Lanigan's a very, very shrewd operator.
He is.
And I think it was a great piece of vision.
Yeah.
What it does for the Super League brand ultimately, I'm really not sure.
Well, that's got to be seen, hasn't it?
We've got to project forward a year.
Wasn't it a case of drawing a bit of a line in the sand to something different? Wollongong 1 year. Maybe the west coast of America the next.
Sure.
I think if we're going to do it, Chris, there needs to be almost a proper structure to it, because it has broken up the start of Super League. There's no doubt about that. Those 3 teams have all paid a price this week in terms of league points. If we had matching seasons, everything would fit so much better, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Internationals and indeed projects like this, and indeed the mid-season break, international break, where we can put on a New Zealand-England game.
I mean, the World Club Challenge should really ideally be the first game of the season, shouldn't it? That should have been the starter for
the last game of the domestic.
Well, the last game indeed, yes, but you know, that seems impossible to organise. So let's make it the first game.
Is it impossible to organise? Because if we are going to have an international calendar now, and Ian Lanigan's talking about the international club game, and surely, you know, whatever you think about whether it should be New Zealand, Australia, and Great Britain, or whether it should be Wigan, Wigans, Brisbanes, Melbournes, etc. Surely there's a space in that international calendar to have a proper World Club Challenge at the end of the year, that you have a 4-year cycle and one of those years includes the World Club Challenge.
But unfortunately, there will never be harmony, Dave. There will only be whatever the NRL clubs say they want, and that is what hamstrings the entire game.
And it's interesting watching the Australian media reaction to Melbourne's massive victory in the World Club Challenge. And looking at the Melbourne Age, the major paper there the next morning, it was all about not that we're World Club champions. Billy Slater's got a bit of a shoulder problem. That's how they rate it in terms of importance.
Same with the World Cup. I mean, before the World Cup kicked off last year, we were in Australia for a week, well, the week of the World Cup kicking off. For the first 2 weeks, the Australian press was dominated by where's Cooper Cronk going? It wasn't interested that the biggest event in rugby league was actually on their doorstep.
The biggest from our perspective, but maybe not from theirs, and that's the worry what we're talking about.
That is the worry.
Well, I think it was in the end, wasn't it? I mean, they eventually cottoned onto it in Australia, but about a month late, don't they? It seems to me, and they eventually cottoned on to what was happening with Tonga and the other South Pacific nations.
Yeah, I mean, that Tonga thing was fantastic. Yeah. Absolutely sensational. So it's too early in the season to draw any conclusions domestically at the moment, isn't it? We're not crowning Wakefield or Widnes champions at this stage.
I think we can say Saints are the strong favourites now.
And Catalan have got a lot of trouble. Catalan are in big trouble.
I think obviously Hull have paid a little bit of a price with the defeat, firstly to Wigan, but then on the back of that against Castleford at the weekend. They'll wake up. They're a better side than what the league table shows at the moment.
For me, the championship is the absolutely fascinating start to the year. We've seen Toronto on Premier Sports this year. Not as easy as it was last year, as you would expect.
Sure.
But you've got those 3 teams now. You've got London, you've got Toulouse, you've got Toronto, who are all looking, pretty decent.
And Dewsbury in the top 4, Dave. Danny's going to tell us all about that.
My boys Dewsbury and Batley, it's our year. Super League, here we come.
But London. Pay attention to Danny Ward at the moment.
Absolutely fabulous. They've been quietly on the mend for the last couple of years of London, haven't they? And they really look like they're going to be knocking on the door this year at the expense of someone like Lee, and I can only think, obviously Neil Dukes has gone now after a bad start of the season. I'm wondering how all the Super League clubs feel who put their hands in their pockets for a significant parachute payment for Lee. I'm wondering how they feel that was spent.
Was it £500,000 well spent?
It's early stages. They only have to finish in the top 4.
I still think Lee will be there at the end of the season. Yeah. I'd be amazed if they weren't, whoever the new coach is. But Danny Ward, as you say, deserves a tremendous amount of credit, doesn't he? Because a lot of people were making some fairly parlous predictions about London this year. They were going to be as low as 10th and so on. And most people seem to think that Danny Ward would really struggle to replace Henderson at the head of the club. But the really smart thing about Danny Ward is, he's been at that club for a long time. He's been, in the academy and the assistant's role at the club, and he knows all those young kids that they're bringing through down there, and he knows that he can, put his faith in them.
I think that's the key to Martyn. He's bringing through. He's bringing through a lot of young players. And you look across the Super League, London Broncos has been a breeding ground for some very good players, and that is the strength of London as well. We're so busy talking about Toronto, New York, Boston, Hamilton, whatever in the Super League, and ignoring what's on our doorstep. And a London club is really important to Super League, and we might even get
vital.
it. I think you can look across the entire board, whether it's in the Super League or Championship, and you look at those squads, and in a lot of cases, say there's much of a muchness. They've got some good talent in there, but isn't the secret, certainly in terms of someone like Danny Ward, it's the coach who knows his players, who can get the best out of them, and that is where you see the success coming through. No matter what you might think of the individuals, and when I see teams like Toulouse, they've got pretty much the squad that they had last year.
Yeah.
There's some real kind of continuity there, and I think that breeds success. And you get someone like Steve Mack down at Catalans, and I think he's struggling to know or get the best out of some big names.
The thing about Danny Ward is that he really shows, promotes the idea that you promote from within. Yeah. When you're appointing a new coach.
It doesn't always work.
It doesn't always work. Certainly, it's the old Liverpool Football Club formula, isn't it, from many years ago?
Yeah.
I think you can't overstate the importance of the coach. No. In terms of getting the best out of a team, and when they do, I mean, look at Dennis Betts. He struggled all last year with injuries. They had a nightmare year, did Widnes. This year, He looks like he's got a settled side. Not a lot of depth, but he can get.
But they've got some very good young players who actually all got run-outs last year, didn't they?
And they've all stuck together.
But Widnes have been good at keeping their. I mean, I know the likes of Kevin Brown have moved on and that, but they're good at keeping their kids together. That half-back combination, Bell and Gilmore, I think that is key to them as well.
It looks good, doesn't it, at the moment?
Yeah.
It looks good, and I think Widnes are again a team that's going to defy predictions this year.
If the injury gods smile on them.
True.
They don't have a lot of depth.
Just a quick mention, and a smile on the lips, and it shouldn't do, but that Phil Bentham injury, and Chris Houston has got a 2-match ban from running into Phil Bentham. I think it's the second time he's run into Phil Bentham in the last 2 years.
It was.
But you look at it, and it looked accidental.
He's got his eye on the ball.
Yeah.
And
it's the second time he's run.
It's the second time.
Same referee.
So lightning does strike twice.
I must say, when I saw the 2-match ban, I kind of thought, "Oh, that's."
Well, it's interesting
harsh.
that he accepted that, isn't it?
He did, though.
Yeah.
He did.
That's fascinating.
That's the mark of the man, isn't it?
Well, I guess it's the duty of care thing, isn't it?
Yeah. Referee.
Never
been as good.
Duty of care. Phil Bentham don't get in the way of Chris Houston.
And it's always him. Because he got that injury in the Wigan Hull KR game as well, didn't he?
No, the question is, will Phil Bentham ever referee another Widnes game? That's the.
Well, I'm sure he will.
He'll have in his mind, Chris Houston, we have a problem.
Chris,
I've never heard that one before.
Sorry.
Right, so that's on the field. Off the field, wow. Where do we start with what's going off the field at the moment? Rod's going to be sitting in this chair next week. Rod Studd is going to be here next week, and I'm sure he'll be a big fan of the fact that the Hearns might be getting involved. We saw selfies, RFL selfies yesterday. They were so thrilled to be sitting with one of the Hearns that they took a photograph and put it out on social media.
Yeah, it's funny that, isn't it? They put it out on social media. They don't put it out into the official media.
No.
It's really weird. If they
social
have a
media
meeting,
is the official media.
Oh, is it? Okay. Okay. If everybody likes just to talk to one another, that's fine.
Well, it's nice that we're name dropping with people such as the Hearns.
Yeah.
But I just don't know what it's about. I don't know if it was Ralph interviewing for his job back, if it was.
They both have very nice suits on. I know that. And it's a nice piece of the Waldorf
Well, that's
Hotel.
probably about as meaningful as the conversation got.
In all
seriousness,
seriousness, whether the Hearns could take over Rugby League and run it better than it is one question. But the Hearns do have a certain marketing nous. So surely it's incumbent.
Not since they've been the girls.
But it's incumbent on the RFL to look at all areas, and I'm sure that they're speaking to other people, not just the Hearns, about how they improve marketing. That's fine.
They have to, but if you look at the Hearns, they're built on individual sports, boxing, snooker and darts, and brilliant in that.
It's different.
Events. But there is a possibility within Rugby League to take an event, maybe it could be the Magic Weekend or something like that. Now, the Hearns involved in that could be quite interesting. But Rugby League per se is not going to happen. It's not going to be wholesale takeover.
The thing about Eddie Hearn, or the thing that Eddie Hearn said that I think is quite relevant for Rugby League, is that he couldn't name, before meeting Ralph and so on, he couldn't name probably a single Rugby League player because it's passed him by. Now, he's a guy who's in charge of a major company that covers many sports, and yet he doesn't know a damn thing about Rugby League. Now, that's a really bad sign from Rugby League's point of view, that somebody like him, should be able to say that.
Of view, in that he doesn't take much interest.
Well, he doesn't have to take an interest in Rugby League, does he? But the point is that Rugby League should be big enough to make sure he does take an interest in it. I'm sure he knows loads and loads about football, even though their company don't have a role in football, as far as I'm aware. Barry was. They're not Leighton Orient anymore, are they?
No, he's out now.
Yeah, that's when he was there.
It didn't do anything with him.
No, it didn't. No, and that's really true. Yeah. No, I mean, I do agree with this idea that they are great at individual sports, the Matchroom, and you've got to say they're a smart organisation. They've done tremendous things with darts and snooker. But Rugby League is such a different sport that it's difficult to know.
But what was interesting to hear from Eddie Hearn, and actually say what he said, I don't know a Rugby League player, the sport does seem to be what's happening with the sport. I think he hit the nail on the head. That's the outward perception of Rugby League. Yeah. We can all sit here today and talk about that, but the outward perception is they don't know who plays the game. No. They don't. And he's hit the nail on the head.
We failed to promote our stars. That's the real problem.
Yeah. But, we talk about events and you say, maybe they could take a World Club Challenge, maybe they could take a mid-season international, maybe they could take the Magic Weekend. Don't we think that Magic Weekend has done well and that we've moved it around well?
But maybe, maybe it can be improved further. We don't know. That's what they're about.
I'm not sure, looking around the whole pantheon of sport globally, how you do
But
that.
you're right. I don't think Eddie Hearn. He's been asked his opinion, and he's given his opinion, and he's had the selfie. But whether he himself is interested, we don't really.
I think Eddie Hearn has got a lot on his plate.
Yeah, of course he has.
With boxing and all the other sports they have at the moment. So you know, I don't see that he would have the time to devote to rugby league.
They turned table tennis into ping pong.
Yeah.
That was the big idea with that. And the only reason was because, of course, they've got the Alexandra Palace. They've got to take it for such a length of time. So, OK, we'll reinvent. Yeah. We'll make them play with 40-year-old bats and call it ping pong.
But I
really don't want that science applying to rugby league, if I'm honest.
You don't really need to be Eddie Hearn to identify some of the problems that rugby league has and some of the, you know, difficulties with the organisation and marketing of the game that it suffers from. You know, I think anybody on the street could probably tell you what some of those problems are. Quite frankly.
What the solutions are, well, that's for us to find out.
Yeah. Shall we do that?
Well,
should we between ourselves work out what the solutions are?
We'll do
for
that
the game.
next show.
How we can market this game? Should we do that? I'll throw out nicknames. Players' nicknames. I'm going to throw that into the hat, just for one. Team nicknames. We need to be doing more with team nicknames. I'm going to throw that into the hat.
Well, I'll tell you something that the game ought to do. Not kick off the season at the worst time of the year, the coldest, wettest, most horrible time of the year, right at the start of February, on the same weekend that the Six Nations kicks off.
But he's done that for years, Martyn.
We used to love the winters. We used to love the winters.
That would be a great
When Super League started in 1996, the end of March.
I'm going to stop you there because we're going to be talking a lot more about this in part 2 of Back Chat. And maybe we might get into nicknames and all the rest of it. We'll see you after this break. Hello and welcome back to the Arc in Headingley for the first Back Chat of 2018. We're with you every week now through towards the end of the season, so ain't that something to look forward to? Stick it in your diary on a weekly basis. Joining us today, Danny Lockwood, Martyn Sadler and also Chris Irvine, chatting through some of the stuff that we've missed at the start of the season, catching up with some old news and creating some new news. We were talking just before the break, Danny, about how we market the game properly, and I threw in nicknames. And I think there is a serious side to this. We were talking about this on a different platform earlier this week, about none of the players these days have as many great nicknames as they did in the past. The brick with eyes, cement, you know, zip zip. And everybody identified with these nicknames. There's a quote from a chief executive of the Harlem Globetrotters, one of the most marketed brands in the world of sport, who says how important nicknames are because that gives something for the kids to buy into. Is this something that we should be looking at more with clubs?
Well, I think maybe we just go to the one name scenario, eh? So whereas you have Ronaldo, we could have
Richardson.
Richardson. I don't know. I get that. We get the tank on the flank, don't we? We got, we have the volcano.
But when Bradford were in their pomp, for example, I mean, these days we've got the two clubs coming out, but when Bradford were in the pomp, they used to introduce every single player.
Who was the hop stepper?
That was Robbie Paul or Henry Paul, one of the others. Yeah. And they had a bit of music, and so all the kids in there could choose which was their favourite player and really buy into that.
The hero worship part of it. The hero worship part of it is massive, and that is what kids buy into.
Yeah.
Is it just the nickname? Well, no, but that helps. And I don't think you're looking for 17 nicknames in a squad, but it's nice if you've got some star quality. Yeah. And that is what we have to develop, Dave. Is the star quality?
We've got star quality.
Okay.
Tom Johnson at Wakefield. I'd pay to watch him every week.
But what would you call him?
I'd call him
the Paint Man, Johnston.
Somewhere with a J, Super J, or something like that. I don't know. He's working on.
Yeah, we need Eddie Hearn too. We need Eddie
Hearn. He'd come up with a name, just like that.
I think we should have girls to walk the players on. You know, skimpy outfits?
No, we're not. No, I don't think that's.
We're not going there?
I don't think that's PC at all.
That's very yesteryear. But
Yeah, that's yesterday's idea. Yeah. Look. When the Volcano signed for Bradford, everybody knew him as the Volcano.
Sure. Yeah.
We wrote about him as the Volcano.
Yeah.
We talked about volcanoes and erupting and pyroclastic flow and all that kind of stuff.
The wild bull of the Pampas doesn't quite roll off the tongue.
Baby-faced assassin. Remember the baby-faced assassin? Who was the baby-faced assassin?
Was that Al Capone?
No, the baby-faced assassin. Anybody?
Go on.
Anybody? Featherstone Rovers, second. Brendan Tooter, the baby-faced assassin.
Right.
Wasn't he also Paul Deakin? Wasn't he the?
He was just baby-faced.
Okay.
He was less of an assassin than Brendan Tooter.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
But I remember growing up as a kid, Rocky Turner.
Yeah.
He was. I always wanted to grow up to be as tough as Rocky Turner.
Yeah.
Failed miserably, sadly.
But again, of course, there's scope for all this. And anybody, look, the RFL, I suppose, has a £1 million marketing budget. What is actually that spent on, I'm not quite sure. But of course, nicknames, anything to engage fans, anything to engage people outside. Unfortunately, this sport is so parochial-minded at times, it doesn't see this need to buy in from outside. And that's what we need. That's what Hearn might supply, that buy-in from outside.
Have we got to the point, Dave, seriously, where everything's pretty much been done? I mean, the great Peter Deakin and the marketing revolution of Rugby League, we're still kind of stuck a little bit in that age of, the Widnes Vikings, the Leeds Rhinos. We're actually going back. Wakefield Trinity have dropped that.
I think we stepped into that, and now we're stepping back again.
from it.
The reason why the clubs took on the nicknames, and the Bulls were the first to do this before Super League, weren't they? They rechristened themselves the Bulls.
Well, based very much on Keighley Cougars.
Keighley Cougars. But they did it because they wanted to attract an audience outside of Bradford.
Of course,
if you're Bradford, then who cares if you're living in Luton?
But
if you're the Bulls, if you're a sexy image, that's what makes
exactly.
people
But that's
care.
what Peter Deakin was all about, that buy-in from outside as well as the city. And that's what we lack. And that takes vision, that takes marketing, and that takes money, and that takes some real will. And I don't think that exists at the moment.
And the difficulty is there doesn't seem to be anybody in Rugby League at the moment whose job is to think that way.
Yeah.
Whose job is to think about those issues.
Well, I think it is.
And as you say, maybe that is.
But it's up to the clubs.
It is up to the clubs, and that's what they will tell you that they excel at. I would have a view on that. But I think that where we've got to with the game, and you're right, Dave, and in terms of selling it and doing it better, aren't we now at that geographical point? And isn't that what we're being taught by Toronto, by the emergence of Toulouse, by the possibility of New York, by a potential game in Denver? Aren't we now about taking, if we're really convinced of our product, and we should be, we all are.
We always have been.
Yeah, we always have been. So isn't it now about moving that glitzy as it's going to get, product onto new stages and attracting new audiences?
Or is there an inherent problem? I mean, I was lucky enough to look at the first edition of Open Rugby, which was the precursor of your magazine. Harry Edgar, of course. And he writing in that about what a great game we've got and how we need to take this to the masses. We've been saying this for decades. Is there an inherent
Maurice
problem?
Lindsay at the start of the Super League era, Barcelona and goodness knows
Is there an
where.
inherent problem with Rugby League?
Look,
Are we
I'll
looking
tell you
at it through rose-coloured?
The problem that Rugby League has is that we can't really very easily fill our existing stadiums for our existing games. It's great taking matches elsewhere, and I'm firmly behind doing that. But we've got to find a way to fill what we have at the moment. And, we occasionally get some great crowds, 4,000 at York to watch Bradford, for example. But we need all the clubs to be doing more or less what York did, I suppose, which is go out and promote every game, enthusiastically
they'll tell you that
and fill their stadiums. I'm really keen to see Wigan, for example, taking more games abroad, but I'm even keener to see the DW Stadium full for Wigan games. That's what I'd like to see.
Some clubs are getting it right.
I agree with that up to a point, and that's vital. But it's about television image. If the Winter Olympics taught us anything, it's just there's hardly anybody watching, but the visual spectacle, and we do have that in rugby league. We have that visual spectacle. That's what it's about. It's about taking it outside of our confines, and if that is through the medium of television and the internet and all the rest of it, then we have to look to the Torontos. We have to look to North America, and we have to grow the sport. Otherwise, we are just hemmed in this tiny area, getting smaller and smaller.
I absolutely agree with Martyn in terms of filling the stadiums, but I think that plays into another one of our problems, which is with too many games against the same clubs. And when teams are playing each other 4 or 5 times a year, which happened to 3 or 4 clubs last year, I think that you are going to wear out the patience of those people.
You dilute it. And people talking about 10 clubs in Super League, presumably playing each other 3 times. How crazy would that be? How tedious would it be
there has to be a middle
to see
ground,
clubs,
you know.
clubs playing each other all those times?
But do you think we're going to get this Ian Lenigan? It's a vision, or I'm not sure. In 5 years' time, he's talking about maybe one, maybe two teams in North America, maybe 1-2 teams in France, maybe a London. Do you think?
And even a Perth.
And therefore, say they maybe and they create half of that Super League. Is that the way forward?
I'm keen to see it, but we need to see
see
how it's going to work, don't we? I mean, I wish Ian Lenigan would come out and be a lot more forthcoming.
Yeah, because it's a bit like Brexit, Martin. There's political manoeuvrings at the moment. We're not seeing the end game of where it is at all. We're in the depths of that at the moment.
And the problem is that game is not. It's not an easy movement. It's not an easy movement. It's a tectonic shift, isn't it? Because you've got fors and against, but you've also got a TV contract. And the TV contract, we're locked into that. The game is locked into that till 2021. So to change the structure of the game now would mean a renegotiation with the TV company.
Yeah, but
and the
Dave,
TV company might say, well, I'll tell you what, we'll pay you less.
We know that, though, that negotiations start early. And the negotiations for any new deal will be starting now or next year. So we could get change then. So we're not, I know this is the Gary Hetherington's thing, that we're locked into this till 2021, but actually we're not, because negotiations can start early. This whole argument is what does exist beyond 2021 for the sport, because without a TV contract, without that money coming in, we are a semi-professional sport at best.
And nobody really knows what the future of Sky is, if we're really honest about it, because there's talk, as we're speaking now, about another bid for Sky from another American, company that owns NBC and so on.
Well, we've just got a new television deal with which is down on the football, the Premier League. That's down, and it's with Sky and BT Sport. But I think the contract beyond that is going to bring the Amazons and people like that in. The whole field is changing.
It's going to be a completely different landscape. I think that the RFL have got their eyes on that.
They have to.
I wasn't at all convinced about the live streaming experiment that we had.
No.
And the silence that emanated the silence that emanated from that told you how much of a failure it was.
Yeah, but that's not to kick that into long grass and say it didn't work.
But that may well be the future.
It is the future.
That is the future.
The timing was wrong.
Nigel Wood, who is going to be back on our screens metaphorically with a big role to play when he takes over at the RLIF, is going to have a heck of a job on his hands. He got a lot of the kicking at the time when he brought in the £200 million Sky deal. But if you knock that back 2 years, with BT and Sky now sharing content and effectively controlling the marketplace and lowering revenues to sports, that might have been a piece of genius business. While we cast forward and see what the land is going to look like.
The problem with that piece of business was, though, I mean, financially, you might be right. The problem with it was that we've now got the championship with only Toronto games being shown on television. And that's a tragedy really for that competition, because there's such a lot of entertainment value in the championship.
Yeah, but Martin, you were talking earlier about crowds. So you look at the championship, and you look at last weekend, for instance, there were 3,000 at Lee and there were 2,000 at Featherstone, and beyond that, the other games, 4, 7, 8, 900, 1,000. That's it. That's where there is. It's little more than park attendances.
So is it time then to, looking at this 2020 plan, this 10-10 plan, call it whatever you will, the letter's gone out with Led to Believe, letter's gone out to all the clubs to say there are certain Super League clubs who see this vision of the future, to have 20 clubs in 2 leagues of 10, and the rest, you go and look after yourselves. Is it time, therefore, to say, actually, that's the right way forward? Because these clubs might be traditional clubs, might be great clubs, but they're not cutting the mustard in terms of bringing crowds.
I think there's almost an existential crisis for Rugby League here. We don't know quite, we're all for tradition, all the rest of it, but the money that's going to be dictated, the Super League clubs want all the money, basically. And that might be a shrinking pot we're talking about here. And is there room for the smaller clubs beyond that? Perhaps not. We're at crunch time for this.
Well, I think the role of the smaller clubs has to be looked at very carefully. And if you are a smaller club in League One, for example, there ought to be conditions that attach to you being a member of League One. You ought to be, for example, expected to sell so many tickets for Rugby League's big occasions and so on and so forth. But I think to just cut them out, to cut them off, and would be crazy, because you'd alienate so many people.
Well, there's a way of doing. Isn't there a way of doing it? A friendly divorce, so to speak. In that, we've got an amateur game that there was a big rift for ages, wasn't there, between the professional and the amateur game? But that's coming together a lot better now than it ever used to do. So, isn't there a way of negotiating this? That you have the top 20 clubs, and that the rest.
And how do you select those 20?
Well, that's the problem. That's the problem.
That's
the problem.
I mean, do you put, for example, Newcastle and Coventry in there? Given that those are towns that.
Well, I mean, it's like Super League, isn't it? When we had this debate about who should be in Super League, and of course Oldham should be in, and Widnes didn't have a place. But if you're doing it now, of course Widnes should be in, and Oldham don't have a place.
We come back there to what Chris said, an existential potential crisis. Because what we're asking, Dave, is who owns this sport?
We do.
Because that's what because that's what it's coming down to. Because Ian Lanigan and Adam Pearson think that they should own the sport.
Well, they own their clubs.
They think they should own the sport, and they think that the sport in its entirety is there to support their businesses.
The really crucial thing about this TV contract is, the allocation of funds from it to the various clubs in various tiers. Is that actually part of the contract and therefore a legal requirement
at the moment,
or is it just part of
the eights are?
The structure of the competition? But what about the distribution of funds?
Oh no,
I understand that's tied in until 2021.
Well, that's what I would have thought. So Lanigan and his colleagues, I don't think would be able to change it without agreement from everybody else.
Without the sport.
Look, we need this sport being driven at the top, not being driven from the bottom. That's what we're talking about.
The issue is that on any vote within Rugby League, on the future of Rugby League, the owner of Wigan will vote for what's best for Wigan. The owner of Wakefield will vote for what's best for Wakefield. The owner of Batley will vote for what's best for Batley. The owner of Coventry will vote for what's best for Coventry. This is why you need a really strong leadership. There's nothing wrong with those people doing that, but you need a really strong leadership at the top to say,
but where is the top now? Is the top the RFL or is it the clubs? And the problem with the clubs is
the head off.
They've chopped the head of the RFL off, and it's these clubs who, by the way, are at loggerheads most of the time. Now, Ian Lanigan says that we're together. We've never been more together than we are now. And maybe they are and maybe they aren't.
I think if you asked Gary Hetherington, you might not get the same answer.
Exactly, this is it. But the thing is, do you think that rugby union, very successful, getting money into the sport, do you think they're worrying down the food chain? No, not really. It's being driven from the top, the international game,
but all their clubs lose money.
Game. And their clubs lose money. But it generates income.
And the championship is shown on Sky, of course, in rugby union, isn't it?
Yes, it is. But but there is. I do think we are at complete crunch time in this sport.
Well, someone should tell us what's going on then, don't you think, Chris?
Exactly.
But I don't think anyone knows what's going on.
Well, that's the point.
Everybody has an idea of what they think should go on, but no, it's just a big soup and everyone's added their own ingredients.
Well, that's the point, the RFL seems to me to be less transparent now than it's ever been, certainly in my experience.
But you have a problem with the RFL.
Less transparent, they're almost invisible.
You've got Ralph Rimmer there who wants to be the permanent chief executive. So he's, that's his focus at the moment. People within the RFL are focusing on their immediate futures. The clubs are focusing on their immediate future.
In terms of my experience, talking to one or two club chairmen, they seem fairly optimistic that they're going to have a new chief executive in place, within a matter of 6 to 8 weeks. Right. I don't know whether that's too optimistic or not.
I think our chairman, Brian Barwick, needs to have a long look in the mirror and decide what his role is in bringing together everybody, whether that be the key Super League.
How heavily involved is Brian Barwick?
He's a couple of days a month, but now
6 days a month apparently.
Yeah, but now is his time to show some leadership.
And he's conspicuous by his absence, isn't he? Yeah. You don't see anything from Brian at the moment. You phone him, and it's hard to get hold of him, and so on. Yeah. And he's a very able guy. I'm sure. But he needs to show some leadership of the game because nobody else is doing. Nobody is doing.
Eddie Hearn should get involved because it's just shadow boxing.
Maybe he should. Shadow boxing. Very good. Very good. Right, we're going to take a break, and these two are going to work out if they can actually spell the word existentialist. And I'm going to sit in a corner reading a bit of Albert Camus just to calm things down again. We'll see you in part 3. Hello and welcome back to the third and final part of Back Chat from the Arc in Headingley. We're with you most weeks now through till the end of the season. Myself and Rod and Richard Stead will be sitting here, and we'll all kinds of different jokers sitting here as far as the season goes. But I'm enjoying this first one. It feels like ages since we've sat here and chewed the fat. The 210s, you hinted at it in the last part, this suggestion that there might be 210s. Chris, what do you make of the 210s as an idea, that you have 20 clubs supported by the funding that comes in, whatever that might be from television, and that league could work?
On paper it could. It doesn't really particularly attract me. I think there should be one elite competition. Somehow you leave the barrier open, but I'm not quite sure that 210s is quite the way to go. Okay, well, simply because you know a basic 18, 19 fixtures before you enter some kind of what we're going to have Super 4, Super 6s.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem to work. But that's not to say that they won't try it.
Okay.
I think if you look at most, football-related competitions around the world that have got as few as 10 clubs in them, what you tend to find is that the crowds, the fans get very bored very quickly from seeing the same teams constantly. You look at the A-League football in Australia, for example, which I think has 10 teams, and crowds are dropping away really remarkably at the moment, and it's because of the boredom factor. Yeah. So, I mean, you go down this route at your peril, I think.
I think there's a bigger problem there, Dave, is that I don't think we've got 20 teams who are of the right quality to make that a sustainable mix with an ebb and flow between the two.
I suppose they're saying that in 2 years, that if Toulouse start punching above the weight a little more, and if London are coming up, and if Toronto are entering the party, if there's another North, there will be
lots of ifs.
There are lots of things that have got to evolve naturally, aren't there?
Yeah.
And you don't know for sure. You don't know for sure that some of the clubs in the low reaches of League One at the moment might not be clubs with great potential for the future, And
well, we can't have two elite competitions. No. There's just got to be one elite competition. It's one, exactly. That's it.
Exactly.
And this thing of Super League 1, Super League 2, I think is a problem.
I can see how someone can make a financial idea of it work, but how that will play out, and ultimately, it's down to the fans. Are they going to buy into this?
Yeah. Let me just to illustrate the point. When I grew up, there were 30 teams all in one league. And they were split into Yorkshire and Lancashire leagues of 15 in each. And the fact is that if you supported a Yorkshire club, as I did, the big Lancashire teams, you only saw them every few years. When it was Wigan's turn to come to Wakefield, it was so exciting because you just didn't get the chance to see Billy Boston, Eric Ashton, all those sorts of guys that frequently. So, scarcity, fueled enormous crowds. And we've gone right to the other extreme now, where we see them all the time, and you're almost too familiar with them.
Yeah, you see, I was going to take the mickey out of you saying, I bet you're old enough to watch Billy Boston and Eric Ashton. And actually you are.
Oh, I am, sadly, yes.
You don't look your age.
And what he didn't mention is that he was watching Mid-Ronda, Tredegar, Ebervale 110 years ago.
That was what you were doing, Chris.
Right, let's move this on. We've talked a lot about structure, and for me it's a red herring because we've had so many, like you say, we've had 30 teams in one division. It's a red herring because we've tried all the different structures and none of it has made us an international celebrity sport that we feel it should be. So maybe the issue's somewhere else. Maybe if we had a really
maybe in Denver.
Maybe if we had a really successful England team with a super charismatic coach who could charm the media. Wayne Bennett, another 2 years. Discuss.
John Bateman. Discuss.
That was an interesting quote from Sean Wayne. Did he clock that this week in his press conference? Where he played, Sean Wayne played John Bateman in the centres this last week.
But he played the other centre, didn't he?
And somebody said, what do you think of that? And he said, well, he shouldn't be playing centre for us. The problem is we've got no one better than him to play in the centres. And he's not a centre. And then somebody said, well, what about Wayne Bennett picking him at centre? And he said, wrong decision.
And how good, and how good did young Percival look early season?
And Michael Shenton even.
I find... you cannot argue with Wayne Bennett's track record. And he obviously engenders such a commitment and passion, and he gets everything out of his teams, and he doesn't care about outside that dressing room, all of which is great and admirable. If you're trying to get someone to sell your sport, it ain't Wayne. But I felt, people talked about the World Cup, and I know we haven't discussed it, about how he'd moved England on from 2013, and I thought, what? You know,
Well, my issue.
We almost lost to Tonga.
Yeah.
We lost twice to Australia.
And we were very fortunate that New Zealand had declined badly.
And New Zealand had imploded.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was just more of the same, because that England team could have still been playing now and they wouldn't have scored against the Kangaroos.
The thing about that England, I mean, you talk to the players, and undoubtedly he's a great coach, and undoubtedly he's improved that group of players and blah de blah.
But if Steve
McNamara had still been in charge, I think we would have been very disappointed not to have reached the World Cup final. I think you would have expected most coaches to have got to as a World Cup final.
You look at the squads and the pool of talent that's down there, Dave, and it should have been, given how New Zealand imploded, it should have been us, and it should always have been us in Australia. And we put together 2 or 3 segments of about half an hour at a time of what you call good rugby.
We never put 80 minutes together.
But we haven't done for years.
Yeah.
So
the thing is, Kevin Sinfield did this review, and he did it before Christmas. That it took ages for the thing to be actually published, and the recommendation was Bennett. And I was a little bit saddened by that. I think Wayne has probably gone as far as he could in the job, and I would have liked to have seen Powell, McDermott, or so, them introduced. Now you've got a situation where he's got a 2-year contract, where Powell has actually turned down 2 years and maybe come into the picture later. The RFL talking about everything's on a 4-year cycle, but we've just got an England coach on a 2-year cycle, and we're going to Great Britain tour next year possibly. I don't know quite where we're going with it, really.
Yeah. Well, the fact is, of course, as well, is that if you appoint an Australian coach, you'll play in the Australian way.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
England did that, didn't they?
We tried to beat the Aussies at the Aussie game.
Yeah, we never do.
It reminded me of 1992, the World Cup final. Remember that one? 1992.
One mistake.
Mal Reilly was a coach. One mistake. John Devereux stands out of the line, and the Pearl goes through and scores. And the great criticism of Mal Reilly's approach then was, we're playing the Australian way.
Yeah.
And it's like, when we play the Australian way, we can, when we've got a great bunch of players, we can get close. But
what was the story last year in Super League? It was Castleford Tigers and the way they reinvented it on the smallest.
Lost in the final.
They lost in the final.
Lost in
the big stage.
Final.
Okay, but you know what? From first to last, they were the story in terms of the way they played.
But interestingly, the man who has appointed him or recommended his appointment, Kevin Sinfield, in the BBC studios during the final said, if we play the Australian way, we will never win. We've got to play our way to give ourselves a chance. Now, Leeds did do that against Melbourne, and of course it didn't work out. But we didn't give ourselves a chance. And you're right, Danny, we could still be playing and we still wouldn't score.
I thought, by the way, despite him being director of rugby for the RFL, I thought he was refreshingly honest through his work.
Brilliant.
Some terrific punditry from Kevin Sinfield. And you're right,
Danny,
he identified it.
different channel. Let's move on.
Okay,
Sorry. Wayne Bennett, good?
Well, I wouldn't have appointed him again. We've got he can't be a long-term solution to the problem of coaching England.
But he's not. It's 2 years.
Yeah. Well, no, but to appoint somebody for 2 years just seems strange.
You see, my take on
given
this,
that the World Cup is another.
My
3
take
years.
on this is that another 2 years of Wayne Bennett, because what he said right from the start is that this group of players don't believe that they can achieve. Another 2 years of Wayne Bennett maybe instills in them that mindset that actually they are good enough. And then the next 2 years, you spend that developing a little bit of flair under Darryl Powell.
By the time your Sam Burgesses and James Grahams and players of this calibre and this experience have got to where they are now, if they don't believe, they shouldn't be playing.
Well, I think they do. I think they do. But I think there's a group of players within there who possibly don't.
I do think we have to say, Dave, that we were playing against a pretty average Australian team for my money.
Yeah,
I didn't see
Cameron Smith.
Yeah, Cameron. Well, yes,
Billy
Smith, Slater, Cronk. That's all. But I tell you what, their 3-quarter line didn't thrill me at all. I didn't think they showed a heck of a lot. They've got a workmanlike pack. They always have. I thought we had the star quality to take it to them, but we didn't have the game plan.
Yeah, really?
I thought so.
Right.
Well, we
Seems a
clearly
long time
didn't.
ago now, doesn't it?
We clearly didn't, because we didn't win, did we? So but. I mean, that point you made about, players psychologically still don't believe that they can beat the Australians. If that's true, and I'm not sure it is, but let's assume that it is, then what they need is a psychologist on the training team to instill that belief into them.
Is that
maybe that's Bennett.
Yeah.
Maybe that's Bennett, who knows? But, the first thing you've got to do is believe that you're going to win. You can't go into any sporting contest, not believing that you're going to win.
And I think the evidence of what we've seen at Castleford and why Daryl Powell is the heir apparent, to me at least, is because the way he's reinvented people. I know Liam Finn's gone on now at Wakefield, where he's doing very well, but he rescued his career literally off the heap, did Daryl, and made him into an effective Super League player. And he's done that with a lot of lads. You know, taken them, made them better than they are, and made the collective better than it looks.
I wanted to see him appointed coach, and when I saw the name Wayne Bennett, and it was inevitable it was going to be, I'm slightly disappointed. I want to see Daryl Powell as the England coach. I think he will be down the road, and I think by the 2021 World Cup he probably will be as well. But we've got 2 more years of Wayne Bennett. You know, his record speaks for itself. But I'm not sure quite if we're improving as much as we.
Presumably Wayne Bennett will be the Great Britain coach, you know, if and when we tour Australia in 2019.
Yeah, two-year deal. England this year, New Zealand come over here. We've got the mid-season test, we're led to believe, in Denver, and he'll be in charge of that. And for the tour over here, New Zealand coming over here, where are we playing at? We're playing at
Hull, Liverpool,
and Leeds. And so get your tickets. And next year it's a Great Britain tour down under, but we don't know yet what the itinerary is. We're kind of getting a hint that there'll be Australia maybe. We might play Tonga in Auckland, given what happened in the World Cup, but we don't know that exact itinerary. So then the year after, the Australians, the Kangaroos, a much missed Kangaroo tour over here. That's when the new coach, if there's going to be a new coach, will be in place.
Interesting listening to some of the commentary from Leeds' defeat at Melbourne, which was quite comprehensive in the end, how the Australian commentators were referencing all our great inventive players of the past.
They were very generous to us.
They were. But that is when we did command their respect. And
to be fair to Leeds and to be fair to Brian McDermott, they went out to win that game playing the way that they could, and it didn't.
And they had a lot of absent players as well, didn't they? You know,
I mean, we could have played that way in the World Cup final and lost by a heavy score. I think we've been encouraged, but we lost 6-0, but it might as well have been 66-0, really. It's so frustrating.
Losing is losing, isn't it?
Losing is losing,
unfortunately.
Denver, Colorado, we're going to have that. We think we're going to have it confirmed keep telling us within the next couple of weeks. We're going to have a message on that. Who knows when and if that will happen?
Well, I hope it's the players that have swung it, because the NRL clubs were not keen at all. But just as those Tongan lads, those Kiwi Tongans, decided they were all going to take control and create basically reinvent the World Cup for us. I hope it's come from them that they've said, we want to go and we want to play in this test match.
But how are we going to get
it?
Where's the crowd going to come from for that game?
I think you will.
That's a big stadium, isn't it?
I'll tell you what. This weekend in Las Vegas, Martin, there will be over 30,000 people watching sevens.
But
there is a massive appetite for rugby.
Isn't there a rugby union game? I mean, I don't follow. You'll follow. You're better at this. You stray to the dark side. Hasn't there been a rugby union game recently in the United States?
There was one
really disappointing.
Well, they've had Ireland in Chicago, but there was a game in Philadelphia. The Saracens took that, which was a very poor crowd, and it didn't work out. 6,000. It was poor, and they walked away from that.
They got 60,000 for USA versus New Zealand at rugby union.
But there's a brand.
Ireland played the All Blacks.
Ireland versus the All Blacks in Chicago.
I'm on about the year before.
Well, there's a brand. That shows you the value of international sport, isn't it? Again, there's perfect. You take a brand like the All Blacks, an international game, and then you put a club game on.
You've got big expat communities in those cities.
In Denver? Is there a big expat community in Denver?
Everywhere. Every major American city.
Why are we going to Hong Kong?
They're event-friendly, the Americans.
Southern Hemisphere clubs, Southern Hemisphere countries, particularly in rugby union, have gone to Hong Kong, been successful. Hong Kong Sevens as well. That to me is a possibility.
I mean, you're right that America's a massive sporting country, but we've got probably only 3 months to promote this game. You know, how can you?
But we've got people on the ground. Crazy. We've got people on the ground in Mount Moore and John Paul.
And there is a hell of a lot of them.
Aren't you working hopefully towards this North American World Cup in 2025? Is a stepping stone towards that, along with Toronto. We're coming into this. We're talking more and more about North America.
For what it's worth, I was at the Las Vegas Sevens last year, and I was talking in the car park to 3 people who were in sports marketing in Denver. And they were talking about getting Rugby League into Denver then. So this isn't news to them if it is to us.
Why has it not been confirmed in that case. I mean,
because the NRL clubs are
Just
sat
wait
on
for
the
the
hands.
NRL to
Yeah.
get the go ahead. But
Yeah,
I think, you know, reading between the lines, and who knows, but reading between the lines, I think it's almost going to be a case of, right, we're putting the game on, we've confirmed the game, NRL clubs, it's up to you now.
Yeah.
That feels like what's happening behind the scenes.
Is there that danger that we might have that, like we had with the Kiwis all those years ago at St Helens? There was a one-off game between England, Great Britain, and the Kiwis, and it was kind of, it's just expats in the Super League competition. I hope it's not going to be something like that. That really would be.
Well, we hope
Yes.
not, but anything is better than nothing.
Nothing, yeah.
Chris.
And they don't know. I mean, the
and in
Chicago
terms of
crowd
a-
don't know.
and
It's
in
black
terms-
shirts, white shirts.
And in terms of
Denver even.
Did I say?
Chicago.
Chicago, sorry.
in
go on.
terms of a toe in the water, we've got to start somewhere. North America and Canada's getting a World Cup. We've got to start testing.
Yeah.
We've got to start pushing it and seeing where the appetite is.
Yeah.
Do you think it'd be more successful than Milwaukee all those years ago?
Yeah.
Don't start talking. He'll start talking about how he streaked on the pitch. And
Well, that was
we've
at
heard
the
that
state of
story.
origin.
It's taken me 6 months to scrub that image from my mind as it is. And we don't want to encourage you. Quick one. We're into the last minute of this first programme. So quick one word from what we've seen, or maybe two words from what we've seen so far. Champions this year?
Saints.
Yeah.
Saints.
Yeah.
St Helens.
St Helens. No surprises?
Castle and Hull will push them close, I think.
Yeah. Tell you what, you get good
I
odds
think
on
Widnes are going to have a better year than most people would have thought at the start.
that. Yeah.
History says that Leeds will always win.
Get to October, Leeds win. That's the way it is. Rod Studd will be in this very chair next week. Look after him. I'll see you in a fortnight's time. In the meantime, this is some of the Rugby League you can catch up with on Premier Sport and Free Sport over the next week or so. The next bit of Rugby League live action coming up on Premier Sports. Toronto up against Swinton this Sunday afternoon. We're on air at 2:45. That match kicks off at 3 o'clock. And for all the forthcoming action right here on this channel, go to www.freesports.tv. Make sure you fill your boots with all the Rugby League that we've got coming up. We'll see you for the next back chat in a week's time.